Alright, so recently I've been getting into cutting glass. I've been working on a project where I electroform a 3D shape, okay? So I'm going to be using electroforming to seal the shape up instead of using the traditional stained glass method of using this like weird foil stuff, this stuff, okay? So I'm not going to be using that. And I'm going to be electroforming the box close. Why? You'll see. Maybe. So, my workflow was quite interesting. And I wanted to kind of share it with you because it might be interesting to those individuals that do like stained glass stuff, or maybe they're interested in just an alternative way to like look at cutting glass. So I'm still using this, okay? But I need something really accurate, something super accurate, because a 3D box that fits together um, requires a little bit of measurement, and it also requires a little bit more accuracy than one of these mats would provide. That's for sure. So you can't laser cut glass, okay? But you can mark on it using a laser cutter. It's called rastering. So if one could, let's say, raster a very, very accurate line onto glass, they can use that as a way to cut the glass. So, for example, this is the rough side because you could feel that. This is where the laser scored into the glass. Okay? But this side is smooth. And it fits beautifully within these squares. So this is going to be a 2-inch box. You can see that, 2-inch. So why would that be important? Well, your cutting mat could suck and it has a big wide line, one. Two, I just put this on a black background and now I can use also this, which has a really wider than the cutter. Okay, so you need something that's really wide and tall in order to pull this off. So you're still using the snap stuff, but at least now you have a method of marking off the glass that's really accurate using a laser cutter. So I won't title this How to Cut Glass Using a Laser Cutter because that would be clickbait all day long. Everybody'd be like, what? You could do that? No, you can't. But I'll probably label the video Alternative Way to Cut Glass or something like that. So I'll show you my workflow. I'm using Adobe Illustrator, but you could use Inkscape too. And this is going to be very specific to our laser cutter, but all laser cutters basically work the same way. So if you had a Glowforge or something like that, you could use this very same method. You would just need a vector program to put out some really smooth lines, and then some math. So if you're making a cube, like I'm going to be showing you how to do, that's cool. You can make any 3D shape using this method, to be honest with you, as long as you had some prior knowledge to figure out what the dimensions are of each plane of your 3D shape. So this is just an example, a 3D cube. All right, so to begin with, all glass is different. Did you know there's no industry standard for a plane of thickness of glass, right? So you go to a hardware store and you get some glass, and then you go to another hardware store and get some glass, and that glass is going to be a different thickness than the other glass. Fact. Unless you get into basilica glass or glass that has some kind of lab value for optics, and then they start getting into like 1 millimeter and everything else. I would highly suggest staying away from that stuff, though. It's very brittle, and when you go to cut it, it just, at that thickness, 1 mil is not going to do it for what I need. Okay? So for my application, I just have to use window glass. All right, so window glass And here's a sample of the glass I'll be using. I got a ton of this stuff. So using micrometers, we zero out the micrometers, and then we go and measure the glass. It's 0.086. Okay, we're going to need that number later on. All right, so now that we have that thickness, we can use Adobe Illustrator. All right, now we're going to look at Adobe Illustrator. So we're going to create new document. The pieces I have are like 11 by 17, but they're technically kind of all broken all over the place. So the biggest pieces are 11 by 17, and then the smaller ones are kind of like stripped from that. So we're going to make a document 11 by 17. Now, if you have a different bed on your laser cutter, obviously you would make it for that bed. Okay. All right. So to begin with, I'm making a 2-inch box. So we'll grab a 1-point square. So 1 point in pixel, and that is definitely wide as the little wheel that is on your laser or thing. So right here, I'm kind of using a 1 point because it matches that wheel. All right. If you're unsure, just print it out. I mean, you can also use millimeters if you wanted to, too. If you knew the millimeter distance of that wheel. And then all you would have to do there is go to View, Rulers, Show Rulers, and then right-click up here and switch over to millimeters. And now you can kind of get an idea of what that looks like in millimeters. So let's say it's 0.5 millimeters. You can see that the 0.5 millimeters turned into 1.17 points. So I'm going to put 1, which is a little bit thinner than a 0.5 millimeter. All right, now that I have the 2-inch square, and I've gone over here and make sure that it's 2-inch by 2-inch, and I'm going to switch back over to inches. Okay. I need a duplicate, so I'm using Alt, click and drag, and I'm going to put this one right on top of that one, and if I hold Shift, it kind of clicks right into place of that one. So now I got my top and bottom of the box. Now what I found out is it's so much easier to have a string of these all laser cut out at once that are roughly the same height, okay? Because you're going to make a score line on these. So they need to look like this. And I did this one just to show you a way in the video. So obviously you could bring this all the way up so you don't waste a whole bunch of material. Okay? But it's just easier to see in the video. So in this case, all these were tops. Okay. All right, so I'm going to make a row of them, and these are just going to be all my tops. And you can grab 3 of them. There's also a step and repeat, but there we go. It's pretty fast because Illustrator has snaps. All right, so I'm going to label this. I'm going to go layers, and this is going to be my tops. Okay, turn that off. Make a new layer. Now we have to do my sides. So to do my sides, all I do is take this box, make it 2 inches by 2 inches, and then you do some math. So you take your calculator and take your thickness of your glass, which was a 0.86, and times it by 2. Okay? And then you're making a 2-inch box, so you can subtract 2. And it's going to be 1.828. So you can now make a box that is got the dimensions of 1.828. .828. And just copy paste that over, or you can lock it and just do the 1. There we go. So these are my right side and left side. Just going to repeat that same over and over again. Okay. Sides. Okay, and now there's the other sides. So there's 2 sides. And now it is only 1.828 in one of the dimensions of the square. The other one's 2 inches. So we need, in this case, a 2-inch by 0.828. It's kind of weird. Like once you fit them all together, one doesn't account for the thickness because the others 2 slide in. I'll show you what that looks like. So obviously, if you were to do a very complex shape, like let's say a pyramid, okay, that'd be some fun. That would be some fun because you would have to account for the thickness of the glass and then subtract it from this just 2 sides of the glass on any 2 angles, and then the bottom would remain the same. After I made one of these, I was like, geez, this is almost addicting to make these. All right, so there we go. So we can just say these are my sides, and we call these the fronts. And if you're a real nerd, you could just say Y X and Z. All right, sweet. Now you certainly could do a bunch of these at the same time. So I could take these tops, okay, hide these, grab only these, and we move them down. And we could cut them like this. I have scraps though, and some of them are not like that, so I can't do it that way on my application. But you could show potentially these all at once if you wanted to, obviously. But all right, so now what we do is we save as. And I'm going to move this one back because it won't work with my application that way or my media that way. So we're going to go save as. And I always save it a generation below the software for our laser cutter. You don't have to do that. It's because when I'm jumping over to a laser cutter, I keep that one correlating to the driver. So the driver works really good on an a previous version of Adobe Illustrator, where this one is more my design machine. So what I do is I just save this as glass, and then I drop it down to CS4. It's not that old, but these are just lines. All right, so now we can jump over to the laser cutter. All right, so if you wanted to hook up your lab, or let's say your house, let's say you have a 3D printer, a laser cutter, or a couple other things. You can hook those to slower computers, and then you have one design computer, and that way you could just utilize the design computer for designing, and the other ones are more designed to just operate those machines. Okay, so I use a thing called No Machine in order to jump around in the lab and then stay at my design computer. So I'm going to jump into the laser cutter. And this is a free application. It's probably the most amazing thing you'll ever own, especially if you have kids, because your kids will ask you a question and you don't want to run upstairs to fix that problem. You can just teleport into their computer and then help them fix the problem, and then they go back upstairs. So it's really cool as a parent too. Just don't abuse it. All right, so hit OK. And boom, we're now on the laser cutter. And you can move files back and forth too. So let's say I have that one that I just made called glass. Then this is a Mac computer, and that's a PC out there. And it also works with Linux too. So you can hop between generations or different OSs. So I need the desktop AI. So what I do is just click and drag it right onto the computer, and boom, drops it right there. And once I started this route, it was like no going back. I teleport into everything now. And you can teleport into it in a video game too. Like let's say you had a video game playing off on one computer and a video game playing on the other computer. You can like be in 2 or 3 different worlds. Very little lag whatsoever. Okay, so now that's on there, we'll proceed to open that with Adobe Illustrator. And notice that it is a version that's much older than the one that I was designing. All right, so once I have it in Adobe Illustrator and open on that machine, now it's kind of like, hey, this is probably where your laser cutter has a different operating system. It has a different software packet. It has different everything else. So this is just kind of like a technique at this point. Obviously, you're going to know your machine better than I do. I'm using an Epilogue laser, and it's, it runs off Adobe Illustrator. It's got a good interface with it. But if you're using a Glowforge, I don't know what that uses. All right, so I got this, and boom, got all my sides, my tops, my fronts, and I do need some sides, X sides. So I go print, and then I choose my media. In this case, that one. Go to preferences, and I'm going to do just raster. Okay, it's already focused for this glass. There's already glass in there, and I'm just using 50% speed, 50% power. That's all you really need. You don't need any vents because there's no gas that is being generated, and you do not need to have the CO2 on either because there's no smoke. or no fire. Rastering does take a little bit longer, so this is going to be quite a bit of a longer journey than you think. So, all right. So for ours, you have to do that twice. Set up print, and let's go back. Oh, it's 11 by 17, so 17 by 11. If I don't see this artboard change, there we go. I have to keep doing that until it goes. That's just my laser cutter. It's just weird. The software is kind of wonky that way. That's the only thing I don't like about it. Other than that, Epilogue is amazing, and they're people that are behind Epilogue they are super fast at responding when something goes wrong. And I have teens all day long, like hundreds of teens attacking this machine, and it has lived to tell that tale. So I thought I'd show you what it looks like when it laser engraves. So send it over. There we go. So I always start like a ½ inch above, that way I can snap it real good, and it squares up the design, because half the time these pieces of glass are broken. They're just scrap that a hardware store just donated. And that's it. Takes a long time. So this is the Epilogue Helix laser cutter engraver. Highly recommended. All right, so again, for the video only, I just kind of kept it in offset the laser so you can see. But trust me when I say that you should always leave maybe a ½ inch at best. If it's a bad material, and let's say it was bowed right here, unless your cutting skills are really good, and then you can definitely use these certain kind of pliers to score it if it's too short. Okay, in this case I just wanted it for the video, and you can see those lines. They are so accurate. Okay, so you are still required to have a little bit of dexterity with this, but one of the things is oil. Okay, get one of these ones that require that you put oil in it, and it's going to be a really thin oil too, real thin. And then get yourself a ruler that's high enough for this. Okay, I'm risking it for the video to cut this. Okay, so let's see if I can do this and be on video. What I usually do is I'll take it and I'll look for the center of the wheel, and then kind of one of these. So it's going to have a certain offset because of the thickness. You can see that offset, but it's lined up to the wheel. And what I like about this ruler, it has a rubber bottom, so I can press down, and there's super amounts of friction here. And just like that. And look at that, it's perfectly on that line. Good. Let's set this off to the side. Then you look for a change in elevation. Not to mansplain the crap out of cutting glass, but here's a change of elevation. I put that line right on that line, and then I press down. Boom. Perfect. Did the laser line help? Did it make it snap better? No. No, that's not what it's about. It's about the fact now I have a very accurate line to follow. Okay? And you could do all your designing in a design application instead of trying to hand draw it on paper and then transferring it over to the backside. Or even using a grid line or grid spacing is irrelevant at this point, because all my measurements were done in a software packet where I could type those in. I didn't have to use any kind of rulers or anything like that. And not to take those things out of the equation, not that they're important, but it is nice to be able to have highly accurate transferred lines onto glass that now I can just score at. So that's why this video is handy. All right, sweet. So that's it. That's how you do it. And you're cutting those out, and then you're gonna put them together, and they'll make a 3D box. So I'll go get one of my 3D boxes. And it's not been sealed yet. I just had to basically do a tape thing to it. So I'll kind of maybe show you that tape technique to put it together. That was really handy also. All right, so this next part, you're going to need a few things. Okay, if you're going to make a 3D box out of glass. Okay, you're going to have to cut all your pieces. In this case, there's 3 variations. Okay, the 2-inch ones, the 2-inch by was 1.828, and the 828 by 828. Okay. You're going to need painter's tape. And now I'm using this glue gun, U-line. Okay. The reason I'm using this glue gun is it's got a really long tip. So just use any glue gun that has a really long tip. It also goes up to an incredible amount of degrees. That's not required, but just wanted to flex. And here's the box that's all put together, except for the top. Because I still have to put stuff in it, I'm going to electroplate all of this. But it's being held together by that glue until I get the electroforming solution all put into place. So I'll electroform the outside and then remove the glue using denatured alcohol. Denatured alcohol in this type of glue, it releases it within 1/10 of a second, and then you can just peel it right off. So also I'll remove the tape, obviously, but that's not the part of this video that's going to be amazing. Part of this one is going to be, I'm going to be using painter's tape to put the cube together. So I'll show you that. So what I do is I'll just grab a piece of tape, then take a little bit off and put this on the ends so that I am taping down the tape. Like that. Then you choose a top, line it up perfectly on the tape. Boom. Then you need a side. And so to get the side, you first take another piece. So I'm going to put this here, and that's going to dictate the thickness. And then I'm going to put this one in place so that it's got that thickness right there. Okay? And then I need top. Again, trying to place that very evenly on the glass. Boom. So the spacing right here is important too. If I can zoom in on that. So the spacing here, super important. Okay, make sure that it's flush here and it's flush on the other side. Same with the top. All right, again, I'm just using the thickness and placing another one. Notice the painter's tape is 2 inches. So that's pretty handy, right? Did I do that on purpose? No. Okay, with it taped down, you can snake, I'll call it snake, a piece of tape this way to make a cross. And again, try to keep that even. So that's underneath the other tape. In this one, you don't have to actually technically put this one on yet, but it's nice to have this one in place. Okay, you don't need it this long, so I'm just going to go like that. And like that. And now I'm going to take this one and peel it back and do that. Okay. And the other side, I'm going to leave about that much. All right, so now you can just go like this. And make sure you're always keeping the same pattern. So in this case, these 2 pieces of glass are touching the table. So nice. Okay, I'm going to flip this one up. And technically I could flip this around. And that way it touches the table. All right, sweet. We got everything in place, and this flap is actually useless, but oh well. We'll get rid of it. And now with everything in place and everything flush, what I do is I'll just hose some hot melt into all the corners. To be removed later using rubbing alcohol. And then I got a few seconds to kind of make sure everything's flush. And that's why I like the super hot melt, is because it gives me an extra couple seconds to make sure everything's flush. And then I'll just do that to the top. This time I'll just let it drip down. There we go, a perfectly flush box. Yay. All right, so now, once it dries, I'll peel all that off, and then I'll coat it with conductive paint in the corners, and then I'll electroplate it lightly. Then I'll put whatever I want in the box, and then electroplate that one too. So whatever goes in the box must be electroplating friendly though, right? Or very well sealed. So that's another story for another time. Other than that, I hope you enjoy the 3D box made out of glass. Have fun.